For centuries, the Freemasons have stood as one of the most mysterious and symbol-laden fraternities in the world. Their rituals, architecture, and coded symbols have inspired endless curiosity, suspicion, and fascination. Among the many theories about their origins, one of the most persistent is that Freemasonry is in some way linked to the ancient wisdom of Egypt, the land of pyramids, hieroglyphs, and hidden knowledge. But what is the truth behind this connection? Is there a genuine line that can be traced from the priesthoods and mystery schools of the Nile Valley to the modern lodges of Europe and beyond? Or is the link purely symbolic, a reflection of the West's admiration for Egyptian mystery and grandeur? To begin answering these questions, we must first understand what Freemasonry actually is. Freemasonry, in its modern form, emerged in the early 18th century, officially marked by the founding of the Grand Lodge of England in 1717. It describes itself as a moral and philosophical fraternity, a system of allegory that teaches virtue, wisdom, and brotherhood through symbols drawn from the craft of stonemasonry. Members meet in lodges, take part in initiation rituals, and use symbolic tools like the square, the compass, and the trowel to represent moral lessons. The central idea is that a Mason is a builder, not of temples of stone, but of moral character, a builder of the inner self. Yet from its earliest days, Freemasonry has claimed an ancient heritage. Its rituals and lectures often speak of Solomon's Temple, of secret knowledge passed down through the ages, and of an unbroken chain of wisdom reaching back to the dawn of civilization. It is here that Egypt often enters the picture. For to many minds, Egypt represents the cradle of ancient knowledge. Long before Greece or Rome, the Egyptians built monumental temples aligned with the stars, developed complex spiritual cosmologies, and established elaborate systems of initiation for their priests and pharaohs. They viewed the universe as a sacred structure built according to divine geometry, a reflection of cosmic order known to them as Ma'at. It is easy to see why later thinkers, especially during the Enlightenment and Renaissance, would draw parallels between this ancient architectural spirituality and the moral architecture of Freemasonry. One of the most visible connections between Egypt and the Masons is symbolism. Consider the all-seeing eye, a well-known Masonic emblem placed within a triangle or shining above an unfinished pyramid. In Egyptian religion, this image immediately calls to mind the Eye of Horus, an ancient symbol of protection, healing, and divine watchfulness. To the Egyptians, the eye represented the omnipresence of divine consciousness, the eye that sees all. To the Freemasons, the all-seeing eye represents the great architect of the universe, a symbol of moral oversight and spiritual illumination. Though the two come from different cultural contexts, their meanings converge on the same spiritual truth, that all actions are seen by the divine, and that enlightenment is the goal of initiation. Another visual parallel lies in architecture. The Egyptians built pyramids and obelisks, monuments of geometric perfection, representing stability, resurrection, and the path between heaven and earth. The Masons, whose roots lie in the craft of building, naturally venerated such forms. In the modern world, many monuments inspired by Masonic ideals take the shape of obelisks, most famously, the Washington Monument in the United States. While there is no evidence that ancient Egyptian builders handed down their secrets directly to the Masons, the aesthetic and symbolic resonance is undeniable. The obelisk, rising toward the sky, remains an eternal expression of aspiration, the human quest to bridge the earthly and the divine. There are also deeper ritual and philosophical similarities. Ancient Egypt was home to what later writers called mystery schools, systems of initiation through which individuals sought hidden knowledge of the divine and the afterlife. In these rites, the initiate would symbolically die and be reborn, emerging from darkness into light. This process mirrored the myth of Osiris, the god who was killed, dismembered, and restored to life by Isis, symbolizing death, resurrection, and spiritual transformation. In Freemasonry, the candidate's initiation follows a remarkably similar pattern. Entering the lodge blindfolded, he is led through a symbolic journey in darkness before emerging into light. He learns of a legendary builder named Hiram Abiff, who is slain and raised again, a ritual allegory of death and rebirth, moral purification, and the quest for truth. These parallels are not coincidences. However, the link between Egypt and Freemasonry is not merely symbolic. In the 19th century, various Masonic rites explicitly adopted Egyptian imagery and philosophy. One notable example is the Rite of Memphis Misraim, often referred to as Egyptian Freemasonry. Founded in France, this system combined traditional Masonic ritual with Hermetic and Egyptian symbolism. The very name Mesraim derives from an ancient term for Egypt. The Rite of Memphis Misraim drew heavily on the Western esoteric tradition, a blend of Kabbalah, alchemy, astrology, and Egyptian mythology, reflecting the idea that Egypt was the source of all sacred wisdom. Even earlier, during the Enlightenment and Romantic periods, European intellectuals were swept by a wave of Egyptomania. After Napoleon's expedition to Egypt and the discovery of the Rosetta Stone, Egyptian art and symbolism flooded European culture. Lodges and secret societies decorated their halls with sphinxes, hieroglyphs, and pyramid motifs, convinced that they were reviving the lost mysteries of the Nile. To them, Egypt was the mother of science, philosophy, and mysticism, the hidden source of human enlightenment that Christianity and modernity had forgotten. Masonic writers of the 18th and 19th centuries often reinforced this belief. Some claimed that Pythagoras, Moses, and Plato had all been initiates of Egyptian mysteries, and that Freemasonry was the modern continuation of that ancient priestly tradition. They saw in the geometry of the pyramids the same divine proportions that Masonry revered in its own symbols: the square, the circle, and the triangle. The temple of the universe, they believed, had been designed by the same great architect whom the Masons sought to honor. Freemasonry's ritual, architecture, and philosophy all reflect this identity. Its temples are modeled on the ancient idea that the physical structure mirrors the cosmic order. Its degrees symbolize the stages of spiritual ascent, much like the Egyptian path of initiation through the underworld to the light of Ra. The white apron worn by every Mason, for example, has been compared to the ritual garments of ancient Egyptian priests. In both cases, the garment symbolizes purity of heart and dedication to sacred labor. The tools of Masonry, the plumb, the level, the compass, are moral instruments. Just as in Egypt, the builders of temples were seen as executing divine plans upon the earth. Even the concept of the great architect of the universe can be seen as a philosophical echo of the Egyptian creator god Ptah, who was said to have formed the world through the thought of his heart and the command of his tongue. In both traditions, wisdom is not merely information, it is an initiation, a passage from one state of being to another. The Masonic initiate, like the Egyptian adept, is led through stages of understanding, each revealing a deeper harmony between the human and the divine. The temple is not just a building, it is the soul itself, awaiting perfection through discipline and enlightenment. Through this lens, the Freemasons' fascination with Egypt reflects a universal truth that humanity has always sought to uncover the hidden order of existence. Egypt, with its pyramids aligned to the stars and its intricate theology of life after death, represented that order in its purest form. By adopting Egyptian imagery, the Freemasons placed themselves within that same quest to uncover the architecture of the cosmos and to understand our place within it. However, this admiration for Egypt also had its pitfalls. The romantic idealization of ancient wisdom sometimes led Masonic and occult writers to blur the lines between history and myth. They imagined secret brotherhoods surviving the fall of Egypt, preserving knowledge through the ages, and re-emerging in the lodges of Europe. While such stories are inspiring, they lack factual grounding. Despite this, the symbolic dialogue between Freemasonry and Egypt has had lasting influence. It shaped Western art, architecture, and even national monuments. The use of pyramids and obelisks in civic design, from graveyards to government buildings, reflects the enduring association between geometry, divinity, and enlightenment. The Freemasons helped keep these symbols alive, translating ancient forms into modern allegories. But while these ideas are rich and evocative, historians have cautioned against taking them literally. There is no direct evidence that Freemasonry descended from the temple builders of Egypt, or that any institutional continuity exists between the two. The Masonic system as we know it arose in medieval Europe among stonemasons' guilds, which later evolved into speculative societies devoted to moral philosophy. The Egyptian connection is, therefore, more metaphorical, a product of symbolic adoption rather than historical inheritance. Still, this symbolic adoption tells us much about the mindset of the Enlightenment thinkers who shaped early Freemasonry. They lived in an age that revered antiquity, that looked backward to the ancients for models of virtue, science, and spiritual depth. To claim descent from Egypt was to claim kinship with the oldest and most revered civilization known to the Western world. It was not so much a historical statement as a declaration of philosophical identity. In the end, whether or not Freemasonry is descended from the Egyptian mystery schools is almost beside the point. What matters is that it consciously adopted their spirit, the pursuit of light through knowledge, the reverence for sacred geometry, and the belief that the universe is a temple built according to divine law. When one stands before the pyramids of Giza, gazing at those perfect lines rising toward the heavens, it is impossible not to feel what generations of Masons have felt, that building is a sacred act, a mirror of creation itself. Each stone laid, whether of granite or of virtue, becomes part of the eternal structure of truth.